A very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Kuugongelwa-Amadhila, your host. Tonight we are extremely privileged to have on the show Prime Minister Saara Kuugongelwa-Amadhila. She is one of the three candidates vying for the position of Swapo Vice President. As we continue to engage candidates for their views and their vision for the ruling party, right, Prime Minister, what a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe for starters, just if you can engage us about how your candidacy came about, because for the longest of time, those of us in the media have been, sort of speculating that you were going to be in this race, but there was nothing official. Now it's official. How did it come about?
Yeah, there were several comrades who approached me to request that I avail myself for this position. They feel that I have been well imbued with the values of Swapo. I was trained by Swapo academically and was mentored through deployment in various positions at the party and in government. And they believe that I have accumulated experience that could add significant value to the administration of our party as vice president. And so they asked me to stand, because in order for one to get a nomination, you have to confirm your availability.
Yeah.
I took my time to reflect on that. And I also recognized that there are procedures within the party by which these issues are handled. So having reflected upon that and having waited for the timing to come for one to announce one's candidature, I then decided to do that and was nominated and accepted the nomination with humility and a sense of appreciation.
And those virtues, Prime Minister, that you just spoke about, that your comrades see in you, is it something that you agree with, that you indeed possess those values?
Yes, solidarity, freedom, justice, and study, work and fight when we were in exile. It practically means that wherever you are deployed, you are to put in your best efforts to make sure that you optimize your contribution to the common cause that you share with your comrades, and you empathize with your comrade, that you ensure justice also economically, socially, not only in terms of legal issues. And that these are the values that have guided me as a student, as a Director General of Planning, as Secretary for Economic Affairs for Swapo, as Minister of Finance, and as Prime Minister.
And going into the position of Vice President, that is an elevation to anything else that you might, within the party itself, that you might have served in. In what structures of the party have you served that you think has sort of prepared you for this position, which is not a light one?
I was a member of the Swapo Pioneers Movement when I joined Swapo before I attained the age of 13. When I returned from exile, I joined the Swapo Party Youth League, was a member of the Central Committee and the Executive Committee of Swapo Party Youth League. I was elected to the Central Committee and Political Bureau of Swapo Party since 1997. I was Secretary for Economic Affairs of Swapo Party. At the time that I took over the reins as Secretary for Economic Affairs, the party companies were experiencing very serious economic and financial problems. And so I was thrown in at the deep end, if I can say. And we were able to navigate these companies through the stormy waters and managed to build an economic empire for Swapo Party, I would say. And it was the same situation when I went to the Ministry of Finance. The commodity prices had crashed, and you know that our economy is commodity based. Our revenue fell, and I got a baptism of fire, I would say, because my first budget, which was an additional budget, which was supposed to avail additional resources, actually reduce the budget. So that was our first fiscal consolidation. So we had to pull up our socks and launch a reform program that resulted in us increasing revenue significantly by more than 10 percentage points, from 26% of GDP or there around, or 23 even, to about 36%, posting the first surplus for 3 consecutive years, and enabling us to strengthen important programs of government to grow the economy and to promote improved welfare conditions. So these are the things that I think I will bring to the table as Vice President for our party.
Wonderful. Now, those priorities, Prime Minister, that you spoke about, obviously, you know, sort of government challenges. The party is a different entity, and I'm just wondering, of course, you will have such influences as VP, but what will be your priorities when you look at the party today? And you see, if I were to serve in this capacity, this would be my key priorities for this position. This is how I'm going to make this mess-based formal liberation movement a better institution. What will be your priorities?
Yes, first, unity of the party. It was unity that won us freedom. Swapo was able to bring together Namibians from across the diversity of Namibia to rally behind it and fight for independence. And we are faced with many challenges as a governing party, and we have to prioritize unifying our members, especially as a democratic organization that has to undertake processes of the nature that we are undertaking now, to make sure that they would strengthen the democracy within our party and not to lead us to break up into different groups. We need to ensure that we continue to improve the brand of the party and mobilize a more youthful population to trust in the party and rally behind the party, so that we can continue to be the governing party and ensure that freedom, solidarity, freedom and justice becomes the underlying principles of the government policies, and that we bring this to the people of Namibia, because we realize that we have won political freedom. We have recorded significant gains in terms of growing the economy and improving welfare conditions, but we still have a long way to go. And in order for us to get there, we need to ensure that we instill in our members these values and mobilize as many Namibians as possible to support the party. We have to ensure that our planning at the party, casting the vision and providing leadership to government, we continue to strengthen. So in the administration of the party itself and its companies, we need to continue to strengthen those so that we optimize them and incentivize our young people that are on the ground mobilizing for the party. It is very, very important that they feel motivated and supported to be able to do their work.
Yeah. We are living in a different dispensation, Prime Minister, where in the olden days, there was a time when Swapo commanded government. It's a Swapo party government. And the party discharged directives and sort of direction based on the manifesto, as that was the basis for which the party was elected. But I don't know whether it's just my observation, but over the years we've seen some sort of evolution where government sort of became stronger than the party, and a lot of people party cadres actually wanting to be more in government than they want to be in the party. Is that something that you have observed and that you can tackle as VP to make, like you spoke about, making it a brand, to make it an attraction for people really to say, I'm happy to sit at the headquarters, to discharge our functions for the party, and for government to listen to us?
Well, the policies of government have always been guided by the manifesto of the party, but we are mindful of the fact that we can improve significantly in the way that we craft the manifesto, but most importantly, how we incorporate the manifesto into the programs of government, or we ensure that that is operationalized at the government level, and that the party is in a position to monitor the implementation of the manifesto by the government. But I think as a matter of principle, it has always been a case of the manifesto informs the government policies. It is only a matter of really improving further on the way that we implement that, and we monitor and we make adjustments where we feel that we are deviating or we are not generating the outcomes that we would like to see.
Now, Prime Minister, there's this assertion for the longest of times, people thinking that your journey has been your journey to the top has been very easy, starting with your appointment in 1995 as Director General of the National Planning Commission, and then of course became a Minister of Finance for the longest serving in that capacity. That somehow it has been an easy journey for you. What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
Well, it is incorrect, actually. First and foremost, I must clarify the fact that the positions in government, in the executive specifically, are appointive in nature. So every person that has served as a member of cabinet or in an executive office at the National Planning Commission included has been appointed to that position. But when it comes to elective positions, being a member of the National Assembly or the National Council, I was only a member of the National Assembly, being a member of the Central Committee of Swapo Party and the Political Bureau, or its wings, these are elective positions. And I was appointed only once by the president, the founding president, to the Central Committee. The subsequent times I was elected, and I would say that I was always amongst the top 10. I made it myself to the Central Committee. I think once Namibians were able to observe my performance, they gained trust in me, and they felt that they should renew my membership when there were elections. When President Pohamba took over, he appointed me once. He served 2 terms. He appointed me once to the Central Committee. The second time, I made it myself, and I was in the top 5. He appointed me once to the Political Bureau. The other time, I made it myself. So in Parliament also, I was appointed once by the founding president, because when I was first appointed as Director General of Planning, I was not a member of Parliament for 5 years. So I became a member of Parliament in 2002. So I was elected by the founding president to that list of members of Parliament, but I was elected eventually because I was on the party list when the voters voted. But after that, I made it to the list of members of Swapo to be candidates for national elections. So it is not the case that I was always put on these structures by the leaders. Secondly, I have talked about the challenges that I have had to tackle, and I think it's in part because of what people saw during the tenure at these various offices that I have served, that they gained trust and confidence in me to be able to continue to vote for me.
Yeah, wonderful. We go for a break and then return with the Prime Minister.
3, 2, 1.
We Talk brings you community news that lies at the heart of Windhoek residents. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact wetalk@synergy.com.na. You live, we talk.
We continue the conversation with Prime Minister Saara Kuugongelwa-Amadhila, who is also a candidate for Swapo vice-presidency. You alluded to earlier, Prime Minister, about your tenure at the Ministry of Finance. Having survived for so long, I mean, to what do you attribute that longevity? What are your memories of that portfolio?
Well, I want to believe that my supervisor and the public felt that I was giving my best to that job, and that the results were inspiring the public to continue to believe in me, which made the appointing authority to renew my appointment there. I remember I was appointed to the Ministry of Finance around the time that the founding president last term was coming to an end. The second president came in and he appointed me for the 2 terms of his presidency. And I think that speaks to the trust and confidence that he had in me. And it's quite interesting because being one of the first people to be appointed at a young age to public office, there was cynicism and skepticism when I was first appointed. I remember somebody saying, and this appeared on a front page of a newspaper, this Saara girl, I would not even bother to find out her last name. What I want to know is who she's related to in the cabinet. So I think the feeling really was that I was too young, and I have to be frank and say that I think the fact that I was a lady also played a role. So people thought that this was something that I could not possibly do, but as time went on, I saw that people were gaining confidence. And it was during the tenure at the Ministry of Finance also that we managed to get a credit rating for Namibia from 2 credit rating agencies, and that helped the country to raise funds in the markets at the lower rates. It also enabled the public enterprises to get their own ratings that were favorable, and they assisted private firms in Namibia to be able to raise money in international markets, because that really inspired the confidence of the global community and the Namibian public into the stability of the Namibian economy.
The one thing that I need you to address for me, Right Honourable Prime Minister, is around the borrowing, for example, that we are where we are now. Did it start with your tenure as the Minister of Finance? For example, I know there are people in government who said, oh no, when this new government took over, they found nothing in the coffers. In what state did you leave the economy as finance minister?
Well, debt was at about 35% of GDP, and I must indicate that debt was at 34% of GDP when I took over at the Ministry of Finance. But because I did not really cry about where we are and where the preceding minister left it, because it was not the preceding minister, it was the situation that was prevailing in the economy. I rolled over my sleeves, and I mounted a program to enforce compliance with taxes by corporate firms. We worked together with private audit firms, and it was through that we were able to increase revenue, as I have indicated, from about 26% of GDP to 36% of GDP. That was the highest in the region. Very few countries had, to this date, achieved that level, and be able to post surpluses for 3 consecutive years, and we were able to use these surpluses that we had kept in reserves to reduce debt from 34% of GDP to about 16% of GDP, and then support the implementation of strategic programs. Today, for example, Namibia is known as one of the best infrastructures in the region. So this did not come out of the blue. It came about because we increased revenue. And I talk about things like the old age grants was about 300, now it's 1,300. We made that possible. You look at the scholarships for young people, and we talk about skills being the most binding constraint to Namibians' development, not one of the, but the most binding. We increased the budget of SEMAS from 200 million per annum to 1.3 billion per annum by the time that I left the Ministry of Finance. Land, we started off at something like 20 million per annum. By the time I left, it was about 350 million per annum. So, and when I left, as I said, the debt was about 35% of GDP. What happened after that is that there were successive years of drought. As you know, we are very fragile when it comes to natural emergencies. And then there was a year of a flooding, I believe. And then came COVID. And that had an impact on the economy, driving the economy into recession, eroding the revenue base of government, while expenditure spiraled because we needed to deal with the drought, we needed to deal with COVID. So we are in that situation. But considering the fact that we had to deal with that situation when I was at the Ministry of Finance, I think this is a situation that can be turned around, because I feel that while we may not have a lot of money in the coffers of government, Namibia has massive out there in the insurance companies, in the pension funds, and in the banks, which belong to Namibians. And we believe that through PPP, we can actually direct these funds into the Namibian economy and use also some of the programs we have, like SEMAS, to redirect these funds in the public health sector, so that we improve services to the Namibian people, but also support the revival of the economy through boosting the construction sector.
Yeah. It goes without saying that whoever is going to win this VP race in Swapo is very likely then to become Namibia's president in 2024 if the party manages to circumvent all those challenges. And Namibians seem to be crying for an economic president. Does that put you in a better position?
I believe that I can add significant value because, as I have said, I am a trained economist. I have worked in the economic sector for most of the time that I have served in government, but also at the party. And I have dealt with challenges there, and I have enabled government to overcome them. So this situation we are facing really does not overwhelm me. I believe that this is a situation that we can turn around. And I think that with more skilled manpower, more young people with energies and skills and willing to work, I think we can combine that with the resources that we have in the private sector and turn around the situation in the country.
Yeah. How has been the response of to your candidacy by people in Swapo?
Very overwhelming and very inspiring, I must say. I have received encouragement and support from people across the diversity in terms of the age of Namibians, the young people, the middle-aged, the elderly who have observed me grow in age and experience through the various deployments. They are coming forward to say that we support you. And I'm honored by that, I'm humbled by it, and I'm inspired by it.
Yeah. Address me, Prime Minister, on the issue of your farm. You have spoken time and again. You've set the record straight, but somehow people continue to use your opponents in this race seem to be using this as cannon fodder against you. If you can set the record straight about the farm that you and Amadhila, your husband, acquired and sold to government at a price that people think it was exorbitant, and so forth, if you can set the record straight.
Very good. First, I would start by saying the Land Act, the legislation that governs land in this country, requires that every person that owns a commercial farm and wants to dispose of it should first offer it to the government. The government would decide whether it wishes to buy that farm. If it wishes to do so, would buy the farm. If it does not wish to buy the farm, would then waive its right and would allow this person to sell this farm to whoever they want to, within Namibia, of course. So we bought this farm for a price that is not what we are said to have bought it for. We never bought it for 5 million. And I believe that those who are actually saying this have that information because I have seen the documents from the deeds office being flagged. And the documents at the deeds office have the correct information. So it's quite interesting that somebody has this information, but they put in the media information that is contrary to what the document that they have is saying. So we offered this farm to the government because of that requirement. Yeah, if there was no requirement of that nature, we could have put it in the market and let other people to buy it. That is first and foremost. Secondly, the government does have a farm valuation system that is approved. It's a standing system that is used every time the government is buying a farm. So this price at which this farm was sold was not just arbitrarily agreed upon between us and the ministry. The ministry has to go value the farm, say this is the value of the farm, and the price was negotiated on the basis of that value. Thirdly, the ministry bought about 9 other farms around the area where our farm was bought in that year. And the price for our farm is comparable to the price that was paid for the other farms. In fact, a portion of that farm was bought at the lowest price of all the farms that were bought around that area, and the other one was about the 6th lowest, you know. So there is absolutely no substance to the allegation that this farm was overpriced. And fourthly, I believe some people are saying Saara sold the farm to herself. I would say, if you are the Minister of Finance, you will file your taxes with the tax office. Previously, that office was a directorate inside the Ministry of Finance. You cannot say, if you are the Minister of Finance, you cannot pay tax there because the law says every person must pay there. So there is nothing wrong for the Prime Minister to sell a farm to the government, provided that proper procedures were followed. And this is the case in the case of our farm. There has also been allegations that apparently we used a proxy. The person we bought the farm from maybe bought it on our behalf. That can never be any further from the truth. There is no truth in that. I don't know this person. I have never met him before. In fact, we became aware of the availability of this farm through an agent. An agent advertised the farm. So we picked this information up from the media and we engaged the agent. I don't know the gentleman who sold us this farm, even if I'm to meet him today. I've never met him. So he could not have bought this farm for us to rebuy it from him. So there is absolutely no truth to that one. Okay. And there was no profit, not $1 of profit was made from the sale of this farm.
Explain that part.
Yeah.
When you say you didn't make any profit, what does it mean? So that what you put in is exactly what you got out of it? Or?
So what it means is that, because like I say, we did not buy the farm for 5 million. And therefore, if we did not buy the farm for 5 million, there cannot be a profit, which is the difference between the selling price and a buying price, because the figure for the buying price is wrong. And as I have said, the buying price figure is contained in the documents at the deeds office, which were flashed in the newspapers. So the person actually saw the buying price, but because they wanted to create this image in the public that there was profit, they then doctored that information and created an impression the farm was bought for 5 million, which was false. So the total proceeds from that just went to the financing of the loan that was used to acquire the farm.
Your husband was quoted in the Namibian newspaper recently saying that if you were to ascend to this position of VP and eventually that of head of state, that he will maintain a clear distance, not to interfere with your official work. And related to that was obviously the issue of Tate Amadhila having acquired a loan from DBN. And you had again to defend yourself from that, saying that you are Saara, he is Tobias, and somehow that you do not interfere with that. Again, if you can just contextualize that.
Yes, I would say that as has been indicated both by myself and the DBN itself, the DBN is an autonomous institution. It is governed on the basis of operational policies that are approved by the board. The Ministry of Finance is never involved in the management of the DBN or any other institution that resorted under its oversight, and this is the case with all other public institutions. I never was involved in the decisions to allocate whatever loans the companies where Mr. Amadhila has shareholding were given these loans. And as far as I know from the explanations that he has given, he got these loans on the same terms and conditions as everyone else, had to put up to meet the requirements that others had to meet, and is treated the same way that others are treated under whatever situation that prevails. I fail really to understand why I have to be singled out, to be required to answer for things that my husband is involved in. I am not the only politician that is married. I don't know whether we are saying all politicians and civil servants have no family members that are involved in business. Now, if there is a case of me flouting procedures, I think that should be pointed out. But to just say that because a person is married to this person and they got this loan or they are engaged in this business, then there is something wrong. I think that is inappropriate and it's unfair. And finally, we have an accountability system in Namibia that says if a person is suspected of wrongdoing, there would be an investigation conducted. That person will be called to appear before the designated institution and be tried. And based on evidence, they will be found guilty or otherwise. I have not been found guilty of anything. It seems there is an attempt to find me guilty, not in a court of law, but in a court of public opinion. And that raises very serious questions. And maybe the last point that I have to make in that regard is, maybe people think it is fair to do that because it is being done to a person that is aspiring for political office in a ruling party. Can you imagine if Swapo party government was to do that against an opposition MP? Would it not be considered to be political harassment?
Wonderful. We go for the last break and return for the last part of the show.
Flex is your health and fitness show that focuses on the health of the mind, body, and spirit. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact zone@synergy.com.na.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact evening@synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.
Kletskompas is 'n Afrikaanse kontinuïteitsprogram met Namibiese nuus en onderhoude. As jy jou handelsmerk of veldtog op hierdie platform wil vertoon, kontak klets@synergy.com.na.
We continue the conversation with Swapo Vice Presidential Candidate Saara Kuugongelwa-Amadhila. Now, Prime Minister, one of the things again that is being said is that people looked at your age and they're saying, you know, Saara is still young. Why is she standing now? They must just allow the current Vice President to run this race. To that, what do you say?
Well, I will say two things. The first one is that there are requirements within the party's constitution and procedures for elections within the party. And these documents set the requirements for one to qualify for different positions within the party. All of those requirements have been fully met. But secondly, I believe that I have been mentored enough from the age of 12 to, I'm going to be 55 years old this year. I have been through all of those institutions, the National Planning Commission, the Ministry of Finance, Prime Minister, Secretary for Economic Affairs. I believe that I have received sufficient mentorship to be able to take up this responsibility. I also really look around and I see that young people who are much younger than myself, have proven themselves in more ways than one. They have proven that the policies we are adopting, they are able to implement because they craft these policies themselves. You look at our hospitals, they are operating on our hearts, they are operating on the kidneys, they are building the bridges, they are flying the planes. So practically the things that we are doing, we are relying on them to craft these policies and to implement them. And the question is, why can't they exercise oversight as leaders if they are able to formulate these policies and laws and implement them? We look around at other countries and we see that some presidents have served 2 terms and finished without even reaching the age of 60. So unless if there is a specific case to be made that in this regard this person has no ability here and there, otherwise I think it would be self-defeating for Namibia to say a person of my age, 54 years, who has been mentored over all those years, being able to challenge to tackle all the challenges that we have tackled, cannot move and take a more senior responsibility. Otherwise, really, Namibia will stagnate if we are going to not allow our young people to take leadership positions.
Do you think then, Prime Minister, that at the age of 55 this month, later this month, that you are at the peak of your career now, that this is the time? Because I'm thinking that at some stage you also want to retire from public office and be with your grandchildren or even your children.
Obviously. I think this is the prime age. I have accumulated enough experience, I believe, and I still have energy as a relatively young person, and I think this would be the best time for our generation to also, you know, invest the skills and experience that have been accumulated over the years and allow our mentors and our forebearers to watch us do what they have taught us to do. I was saying that the first generations of Chief Mahareros and Vetboy and Mandume and Ipumbuya Shirongo did not have the opportunity to pass over the baton to the next generation of the same Nyomas. But if they had that fortune, they would have been very proud to see them bring freedom. We want our leaders that mentored us to watch us do what they have taught us to do and taking our country forward so that they can be happy and proud also.
The fact that we have, you know, I listened to President Hage Geingob speaking recently in New York at the UN General Assembly, and in his address he touched on a new dynamic that could unravel in our country. He said, if I remember correctly, that the country has a possibility of getting its first female president, or that is now in you and Honorable Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, or a first non-exile president in Honorable Pamba Shifeta. Do you think the fact that women are actually the majority in this race, even that there's been a transformation over the years? And does it even matter if it's because there's also this female president mantra?
Well, I think to advocate for a female president is not to say that qualification and experience and other requirements should not matter. Because if we were to say that, it means that we are implying that women can have no capacity to ascend to these positions. What we are saying is that women have always played leadership roles. And with the advent of independence, when we scaled up the investment in skills to our young people, young women have been given the opportunity to get skills. They excelled at universities. They are excelling at their workplace, but we are observing that because of customs and traditions, they have not always been recognized for what they are able to do. So it is important that we are deliberate in also ensuring that women have a place in the leadership structures of our political organizations and our country. They are the majority after all. They bring a special perspectives from a gender point of view, and to the extent that they are capable, and I know there are many, many capable women besides we who are vying for these positions that can be considered for these positions. I think that's very, very important. But at the end of the day, it would be experience and expertise that will speak, and I think all the candidates have it, but we must live also up to our commitment to make sure that there is equity and equality in terms of distribution of opportunities to Namibians.
Yeah, the Swapo is perceived by many as a very, I want to call it a patriarchal organization, but very old-fashioned in many ways. I know that there's been great efforts, which personally I consider very artificial. These zebra-style things, I think that there are better ways to empower women than simply saying, oh, let's do this. It has to be organic. But so does that put you, does that disadvantage you if it were true to say that the party is old-fashioned in the way it looks at the ability of women? Does that disadvantage you in this race?
No, I think it's actually wrong for one to say that. First and foremost, the party is not patriarchal, because if it was, we would never have had female fighters during the struggle for national liberation, because our tradition says women don't go to war. But we had female fighters. We had females in the top leadership structure of the party. When we came to Namibia, we had women amongst the founding members of the National Assembly and the National Council. We had women in senior positions in cabinet. And the women that served in leadership positions have excelled. That is another point. And also, women empowerment is affirmative action. We adopted affirmative action in order to bring people of African background into the mainstream of the economy and the governance of the country. It is quite interesting that we think it is okay to take a black man and favor them in order to balance the situation, to address the legacy of apartheid, but it's not okay to do the same when it comes to gender. So I think that maybe that concern is really born out of the fact that we still have to achieve a mind change of our people, where people think that when it comes to women empowerment, we have to be careful because we need to bring in people with capabilities. Otherwise, others would also say, when you have to hire people in the public service, just take the best person, forget whether they are black or white. When you are promoting economic growth, forget about equity between the races. What is important is that the economy grows. I don't think that would be right. We need to promote inclusive development. And inclusion is not only in regard to race, it's also in regard to age, gender, and cultural diversity.
The final question then to you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, is, President Hage Geingob again said recently that he intends to step down from the party presidency in 2 years' time, I suppose around 2025, when he completes his state presidency term, because he doesn't like this two centers of power concept. That essentially means that if you were to win the vice presidency of the party, that you become actually the overall head of the party I suppose, in the interim until the Congress in 2027. Is this also a challenge that you are ready for? Because a lot of people look at the VP and the fact that the VP might end up becoming the state president, but forgetting that it's actually this big opportunity and big challenge to lead the party itself.
Yeah, well, I believe that it is an advantage that you have a situation where the person that goes into the position of vice president that may become the president of the party is able to go into that position in the way that we are doing it now, because it means that there would also be mentorship of this vice president to be ready for the presidency of the party and to be ready for the presidential candidature for the country. I think that only enriches our democratic system and also our governance, in that there is further mentorship that is provided. But I believe, as I have said, the many years and the much experience that have been gained, I think have provided valuable lessons that can enrich my vice presidency, my presidency of the party, and obviously we are confident that Swapo will win the elections. If I win the vice presidency for the party, it would be also presidency of the country.
Prime Minister, it was such an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, that was the show for tonight. Thank you for watching and good night.
The Regional Review brings you news, views, and interviews from NMH correspondents from across the country. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact regional@synergy.com.na.
NMH Ad 1 brings you news from all across Namibia. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact nmh1@synergy.com.na. NMH Ad 1, your lunchtime news companion.